there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ајде, мајката!
Господе чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
In Macedonia, the leader of the Dewey Ali Ahmeti and his sidekick Artan Grubi just cannot leave well enough alone. They are offering subtle threats, actual threats, and perhaps other actions, which in so many words say that they will be looking to disrupt not just Macedonian politics, but Macedonia in the coming months. What to make of it? In the U.S., presidential politics is turned on its head. What does this mean, if anything, for Macedonia? We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin in Skopje, Macedonia.
And Cvetin, this is episode 178 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. We're recording this on Monday, August 26, which should have significance for Macedonians. It was on this day that Mother Teresa was born in Skopje. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's not nothing, as the British say. So the sainted Mother Teresa, of course, went on to become a missionary in India. There's, of course, the Mother Teresa house there, not too far from the Plostad in Skopje. Mm-hmm. So she is a daughter of Macedonia. And
that's where she had the vision. I think the first two visions in where the memorial house now is. There used to be a church, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, in the center, mm-hmm. and that's where she had one of her visions. And I think another one was in Skopje as well.
Yes. So So daughter of Skopje, daughter of Macedonia, Mother Teresa, born this day in 1910. So, before we jump into things, I think it's important to note we are now, the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast is now on Spotify. Yep. That's right. You can find Joe Rogan on Spotify, and you can also find the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast.
Just below the Rogan podcast.
Exactly.
Just scroll down once or twice, and we'll be there.
So we'll put a link to that and kind of start promoting it. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I guess you have to have your podcast or your TV show or your column that you write on multiple platforms these days. But I guess especially with the audible, the spoken word, podcasts, etc. And musicians, of course, multiple platforms. So we've got Rumble, of course, the Substack, now Spotify. So if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, you're in luck. You'll be able to find us on Spotify. So that's good news. But let's start with kind of what I talked about there in the monologue. So Ali Ahmeti and Artan Grubi, and I wrote about this in a column recently, that they're basically offended by everything. They're offended by life, I think. So we had this, since we last recorded our podcast, we had this little quote-unquote diplomatic spat, I guess, with the president of Kosovo. I forgot her name. Osmani.
Vjosa Osmani.
So she went through the airport there in Skopje and had to have her bags checked by security and made a big stink about it. And it should have been less than a one-day story, but the trolls on Twitter or X and other social media platforms made a big stink about it and just kept it going and going. And of course, Artan Grubi took to Facebook and other social media platforms and said, "Kosovo, forgive us, from master to tenant, from decider to servant, from proud to hand kisser, from dignified to spineless, from white fur to black, from learned to ignorant, from brave to cowardly, from ruler to servitude, from victor to loser, from Europe and America and Russia to Serbia, from Ali Ahmeti to Ivan
Stojlikovic.
Yeah, now that part I didn't get. But anyway,
it's a fun part. They practically took the ministry which Artan Grubi built. That was the Ministry for Albanian Affairs for the implementation of the Ohrid Treaty, and they're now making it a ministry for all minorities except the Albanians, practically. So the Albanian coalition partner can say, listen, we're now elevated to an actual partner, not just one ministry, but we are a proper partner in the government. This is their excuse. And then Vimmer appoints one of their ethnic minority coalition partners to run this department. And they actually chose the Serbian one, who obviously, would not mix with the Albanians well. So this is why Dewey is saying, listen, they gave away our ministry and they're giving it to Stojkovic, who is, in the past, because he's close to Vucic, and, he would go to Serbia for, obviously to Serbia, but he would go to Russia even. He would meet Putin. Yeah. So this is the Dewey objection that the Albanian ruling party now of Vlen, that they are in coalition with a pro-Putin politician, and to make matter worse, he's controlling now the Albanian ministry in the government.
Well, yeah. Well, he's not pro-Putin. He's a part of a government that represents all of Macedonia's various ethnic groups, from Macedonians to Albanians to Vlach to Roma, Turks, etc. So, and that government is very firmly Western-oriented, and that's just a fact. So, Artan Grobi can say whatever he wants. And that's just the way it is. But so anyway, so he went on this rant. Ali Ahmeti a few days later, I think maybe a week later or so, on the August 13, the observance of the so-called Ohrid Framework Agreement. Apparently, and this was kind of funny. There were competing events that day. One by the government with Vlen, the ethnic Albanian party that is in a coalition partner in government, and then Dewey had their own little party somewhere, I think. And Ali Ahmeti said, in part, let all those who think that we Albanians can be divided into good Albanians and bad Albanians listen. Macedonians as a nation can progress only in communication and harmony and good relation with the Albanians. I am not saying this only to you, but also to all other Macedonian political representatives. Coexistence, cooperation can preserve history, identity. They can preserve their national identity. Otherwise, they are destined not to exist at all. So, basically, as I mentioned in the monologue, the dynamic duo of Ali Ahmeti and Artan Grobi are just threatening again, and they've done it in other outbursts, etc. That over the past, well, frankly, since the government of Macedonia was formed and Dewey found themselves on the outside looking in, they've been making threats, and Miskowski has mentioned this. Apparently, the U.S. State Department has said that they are looking at this as well. What else have you heard there? What else is going on? What do the people think, etc.?
I mean, there's nothing on the ground yet. Dewey seem subdued. They're pretty quiet. They respond to situations like this when they try to show that the new Albanian coalition partner is inadequate, that they have lost a lot of ground, not just this ministry which went from Albanian hands to Serbian hands, but also, they lost practically all the important ministries in the government. Only hold the healthcare ministry as an important one, and they hold a few once important ministries, but they have been reformed in a way that they lose a lot of their importance and their power. So this is what Dewey says. They're attacking Vlen for, as you said, disrespecting the Kosovar president, when it turned out that she does this all the time, that she always complains that she can't have her luggage inspected or phone scanned. She did this in other airports. She did this in Skopje a couple of times. But yeah, they want to say that, the Albanian coalition partner is disrespecting is losing relevance in the government. We have a bunch of Vlenar, their speaker of parliament, he gets into trouble. Afrim Gashi, he does stupid stuff. So for example, he was, don't you remember what were the first issues with him? The most recent one was that he spoke in Albanian. He gave the oath of office in Albanian and then Macedonian instead of vice versa. The latest one is he took his official vehicle and police escort and went to Kosovo to attend the wedding of some relative, and So we're now investigating, was he legally allowed to use the official car? Did he come up with an excuse for the trip? Was the border guards, were they like passing him through in proper procedure? Should they have maybe inspected the vehicles before? I mean, like smaller issues, but this is we have an issue with the other Macedonian coalition partner, Znam. They're attacking Vlin within the government. So Vlin would have like a meeting and they would have just Albanian flags or, bigger Albanian flag or something like that, and a smaller Macedonian one. And then Znam has now several times threatened that they would leave the government unless this stops. And then the next day, Vlin would deliberately like provoke something and then do it again. We have a lawsuit within the government. Petar Bogojevski, which VMRO took in, he's a French small coalition partner. He was like a tool of the U.S. Embassy and then turned into a rabid nationalist. And he wrote a social media comment using the SH word for the Albanians, which you're not supposed to do in public and in good company. And then he deleted it and then used the words Albanians. He started explaining, no, but we are allowed to use this word. Like, this is like akin to, explaining, well, I said the N word, but without the hard ER, and then, well, they can use it in a rap song, why can't I? So this is the same thing we have here. And now Vlin is actually suing him, not just,
for what?
Demanding that he's for fomenting ethnic hatred, something like that.
Please.
Think so. But Mickovski is obviously, far and away the largest coalition partner. I mean, the cornerstone of the coalition. And he, even when asked about all this, he said, no, it's all fine. The coalition is working perfectly. He's just ignoring this as, the much smaller coalition partners trying to score some points. And we are quiet as well in all of this. I mean, they snipe at Vlin from time to time, but that's it. But, Mickovski himself came out, said it a couple of times. Former DUI officials, lots of money to their name, stolen during the decades in power, hiring, their ilk from the, previous lifetime, from the war-mongering days. Guerrilla people, essentially, he hinted, he did not say this, but strongly alluded to. And they're planning something this autumn, whether it's protests, maybe some shooting, maybe some incidents. Who knows? I mean, we had a horrible killing in the city.
Oh, yeah, a lawyer? Believe?
No, it turned out in the end that the guy was like he was trading with merchant trading with construction materials, but also had a small shop for jewelry, but not even proper jewelry, just like this cheap bijou stuff. And with his wife, he was apparently either taking merchandise, bringing it to the store, and he was attacked by several. So the guy is Macedonian, several Albanians. The names were not given, but it's, generally widely assumed.
So the victim was Macedonian?
Yeah. It's an interethnic killing. And Albanians who fled from prison like a few months ago. And they wanted to rob him for some reason. Why they just didn't take the money? Did he resist? It's not sure, but they killed him in front of his wife and took the worthless jewelry and fled. One was arrested. Daylight, right? Yeah. Pretty bad. And several other killings before and after. We assume Albanian mafia involved. So then the ministry immediately responded. We are, they're introducing like random patrols, random searches. They're arresting people now for just like carrying a knife or something with them. So there is like a large crackdown on just people acting stupidly in public. But normally, normally you assume that if there is a mafia killing, it's well known who the target is. There is a good reason. Right. So normal people, nobody's surprised. This is not only the interethnic moment, but that they kind of fumbled it. They killed, had the bad information apparently. Right. You expect that they would be well informed before they do something like this.
Right. So, I mean, over the past, and that's a good point. So, over the past 7 years, so we just had a change in government at the beginning of the summer. And while Syriza, Dewey were in power, I think you can, it's not just self-evident, but it's empirically you can prove that crime, especially violent crime, went up around the country, especially in ethnic Albanian areas, etc. And this is kind of the continuation of that. New government's barely 2 months old.
Probably because there is a flux in the mafia market and mafia, how do we call it, underworld, and some of the the mafia groups obviously had an arrangement with the government. There were two large mafia groups in Skopje which were fighting each other. They were doing much of the killing, and one is called Baron, the other Bela Noca or something like that. And it's not an Italian fancy name. It's because they're from the village of Beljanovci in Kumanovo. Otherwise, it sounds very fancy. Bela Noca. It's actually a village. And it was understood that one group has the support of the government, of the SDSM-DUI government. Then at one point, just before Spasovsky was resigning as interior minister, he arrested a bunch of people from the group which everybody assumed was protected. So the other group was rejoicing. They were posting celebratory videos from prison that now their rivals are now on the receiving end. And then after the change of government, it's everything is up in flux, and I'm sure these groups are going to the Albanian partner in the government asking for protection, but they're much smaller than, much less influence in the government than Dewey had. So it's very, even if they want to support somebody, even if they have favorites, it's unlikely they'll be able to give some support. So maybe this is like long-standing debts coming due, but also like this random attack on a Macedonian who, until now, if it was a lawyer, if it was a criminal lawyer, so you can assume, okay, maybe he was defending somebody, promised something, didn't deliver. But in the end, it turned out the guy is just like a small trader, small merchant. So it's absolutely not something you would expect, to have some background that would warrant this. So yeah, it's a problem, and we'll see. We're expecting to see somebody get arrested and some crackdown to happen pretty soon. Right.
Well, okay. It's worth monitoring. You said the talk is that Dewey and Nali Kmeti and Artan Grubi are gonna, maybe really try something come this fall or a winter of discontent. So we'll see. I mean, they're obviously, not only are they pissed off about not being in government, they're also worried about their criminal activities during their 7 years in government being exposed. So I think that's primarily why they are talking this way. Although, again, as I said earlier, they're always offended by everything. They live they're narcissists, and they are fueled by resentment. And there's nothing that can be done, nothing you could give them they're always the victim, and you're always the offender. And that's just the way it is. It's kind of like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson here amongst the black community. So that's what these people are. They're grifters, they're narcissists, they're victims, and the sooner they're gone from the public square, the better. So anyway,
it will all depend. Yeah, it will all depend on the U.S. elections. There is a widely shared, if you've seen this, Mike Benz, if you probably know of him. like a former State Department intelligence guy who knows a lot of stuff and is now spilling all the secrets. He's actually even telling people just follow me on Twitter, but also, actually read up on this. I'm not sure how much time do I have before they get to me. And recently he was posting interesting commentary about, this crazy US support for the Albanian mafia here and the Albanian political interests in the region. And he was using a moment when Dua Lipa was invited to the Atlantic Council, and she was given an award for advancing U.S. interests in the region. And we all know that a few years ago she had this very rabidly nationalist Albanian outburst when she posted a map of Greater Albania.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Another Albanian singer did the same now, Bebe Reja. She's from Debar, so she came to visit. She was posting selfies at the graves of her ancestors and also saying, I don't see a border between Kosovo, Macedonia, Albania, borderline problematic commentary. Mm-hmm. But, in the end, everything will depend on the elections. If, it's not the Bidens now. We don't know what the new administration. I haven't heard of Kamala saying something about the Albanians yet. But I assume I think Phil Gordon is her foreign policy guy. It was widely reported here in the Macedonian media. Mm-hmm. So it would be a continuation of the Biden-Obama policies, Clinton-Obama-Biden policies. So the Albanians would be greatly emboldened if she wins. And if Trump wins, Mickovski is openly throwing his lot with the Trumps. We had Grenell come to Macedonia recently. A major announcement was made that Mickovski was discussing with him, politics, U.S.-Macedonian relations, but also a huge hydro plant deal, the Cvetin contract, which was the Greeks were eyeing for themselves, but now with the worsening of our relations with Greece, it's open to free competition. So I'm guessing Trump-related interests would be interested in this. We had, other very interesting people affiliated with Trump, like Chris was here from Rumble, and David was here, and Howard Lutnick, who is now appointed in the Trump transition team. So, we obviously Macedonia and Vamira would prefer the Trump administration, not to mention with our Orban relations as well. Mm-hmm. So we might have a very interesting regional synergy. But if, Kamala, I wouldn't say wins, but steals it, then, the Albanians would be greatly emboldened, and we can see a lot of things happening in the later part of the autumn.
Yep. So, we are now 70 some odd days away from the elections here. We have a new standard bearer for the Democrat Party in Kamala Harris and her sidekick Tim Walz versus Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Then the Democrat convention just concluded last week, so naturally she gets a bump. But she's playing this game right now where she's not giving interviews, she's not taking questions from the press, everything is scripted. You look at the website of Harris Walz, and there's not a single issue on there. It's donate, donate, donate. Here's how to sign up. If you want to work for the campaign, fill this out. Oh, and by the way, there's 16 different agendas that you can choose from on their website when you decide you want to work for them. But nothing on the policy. So yes, so what you said about what we don't really know except for Phil Gordon and a continuation of the Biden administration, the Obama administration, etc. So which won't be good for Macedonia or the region, I don't think. So, but it's something that bears watching. All right. Well, let's. And this is something I wanted to talk briefly about. And I noticed this, and I brought it to the attention of some translators, Macedonian translators that I know on LinkedIn and other places, and that is so Google Translate. And apparently LinkedIn has its own proprietary algorithm for translating as well. I thought they just used the Google Translate thing, but they don't. But this was interesting, and I noticed this first because I'm trying to get back on LinkedIn and use it more for professional reasons, etc. But I noted because I follow or what is it on LinkedIn? You follow people or you connect or whatever it is. I don't know.
I don't use it much, but yeah.
But anyway, so I follow a lot of Macedonians and whatnot, and they post in Macedonian. And this first example just jumped out at me, and I'm not going to say the name of the individual. It doesn't matter. She posted something about I think the history of flying in Macedonia, something like that. And it starts off, Dali znajete, vo Macedonia, da-da-da-da-da. And you hit the translate button, it says, do you know, in North Macedonia, da-da-da-da-da. She writes, vo Macedonia. It writes, in North Macedonia. There is a clear political bias there in the algorithm, in that it immediately inserted the N-word, not the one over here, the one over there, the N-word, north, into the translation. And then I started going through other examples where I could find the Macedonian language and then hit translate. There was one where it says Macedonians in America, and it translates it as Americans in America, which makes no sense. Yeah. Or Macedonian, says influential Macedonian women in the world, and it translates it as influential women in the world. And so there's a clear bias in the translation, the AI translation. Now, how do you change that? I don't know, but the reason I'm raising the issue here is to make people aware of it. There is a place on LinkedIn and a place on the Google Translate page where you can go to rate the translations and to offer your suggestions, etc. But this one translator is a professional translator. I think he's in London, Macedonian, British, and so he's on it, and I think he's telling other people. But anyway, I don't know if there's a political bias as part of this or not. But it was a bit disturbing that literally, as in the case of Macedonians in America, Americans in America, it literally erased the Macedonians, or Vo Macedonia in North Macedonia. It literally added the North to the phrase, which is a bit it's frustrating really, because somebody creates the algorithms and somebody programs this auto translate, and this is stuff that's far above my head and above my pay grade because I don't understand any of this. But anyway, I just wanted to raise it to people to start thinking about it. The other thing I noticed.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
New sites here they use this. They're like plugins. I think in the when you're opening a website that automatically deletes a word. So I know websites in Macedonian, just in case they accidentally have the N-word slip through if they're copying an article maybe from the state news agency. So they have these plugins to just remove the N-word from the article. So it's very easy to do. I'm guessing LinkedIn has something more advanced, but it's a big problem.
Okay, so when translating from English into Macedonian, you're saying there that it'll automatically remove the N-word?
Yeah, it can be done. Yeah.
Well, that's perfectly fine because again, this goes back to September 30, 2018. The people did not vote. There was no consent of the governed, to use the Lockean term.
Yeah.
So that's completely understandable. But this is a different animal, I think. So. And the other thing I was going to say that in the Google Translate, and I didn't notice this, and Nick, my Macedonian British friend, the translator, hadn't noticed it either. Apparently, there's 3 settings underneath the box that it translates from Macedonian, say, to English, and then underneath the box that's in English, which is on the right-hand side, it offers 3 settings: standard, casual, and formal. Interesting. I did not know that, and so you can play around with that. Sometimes it'll add the N-word, sometimes it'll remove the N-word. It just depends. But it's fascinating for me. But something to consider, think about, etc. So and watch. So
the government should begin to respond to this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, government's got a lot of work to do apparently. So now that we're about 2 months into the new government, what's the mood on the street? I know we're at the end of summer again. This is August 26th. We're recording this. School starts a week from today. Summer vacation is almost over. If you haven't been to the beach yet, get to the beach. So people are going to start, focusing on school, work, etc. And then they're going to pay more attention, I think, into what's going on politically back home. Maybe people haven't been really paying a lot of attention to it over the summer. But what's the mood, the word on the street? What are the vibes, to use a Harris term?
Well, I mean, it's generally positive, mainly because, as I said, the big issue was that the Dewey domination of the previous government and the incompetence of the SDSM people, from whom you would expect to do something. You don't expect anything from the Dewey people. So the first, major change is that its new face isn't not dominated by Ali Ahmeti. That's continuing positive, and there is no opposition to speak of. They're not infighting, but they are irrelevant at the moment. Such a small group in parliament. They're hoping to reorganize maybe for the local elections, but this is a first past the post election. So even if they have an improvement to the numbers for the council seats, they will be destroyed in the mayoral races. They will be decimated. They probably even have to change leader after that, or at least face a challenge and then maybe re-elect the same leader after a local election defeat. So, it's the government is free to move in whichever direction it wants. The government had a major initial test of competence with pretty bad forest fire season during the summer. We had a very bad summer, very, very hot summer. And unlike you guys over there, we actually have some trees and shrubs that can burn. You don't have forest fires because, no forests. I'm not complaining to you about our hot summer, but we had pretty brutal fires.
Well, there's one at Galachica, is the big one, right?
Yeah, near Skopje. A couple of times Skopje was swamped with smoke because it's south of us. Big fires near Ohrid, near Štip, all over the place. And the VMRO kept the same head of firefighting, crisis management, crisis response. This stupid Stoyancha person who, as kind of a coalition deal, he decided to jump ship from SDSM before the elections. Generally failed the test. On the other hand, it's too early to say that they could have changed something, brought in more planes or more equipment, because, this was in the first month after the change of government, and realistically you can't expect them to have reformed, purchased firefighting airplanes and trucks so quickly and reorganized the entire service. We had some support from the EU, some support from Orban and Serbia. But generally it was brutal. But if we are talking, whether this is a statement on the competence of the government, probably not, because it was too soon to expect them to have done something. Some major investments have come in. It's in energy production, some in manufacturing. These are announced. They're still not on the ground because it will take a while, I guess, to actually start working, start construction. And then, actually people did go to vacation, even the Prime Minister briefly and some of the ministers. So it's, other than this pairing with Dewey, it's pretty much the same. There isn't any major difference.
Isn't that nice, just for a brief period of time, not to have any drama?
Yeah, it's pretty calm. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Okay, that's actually I gotta clean up here and get to the office. So let's end on a high note. That's a good high note to end on. So
But it's brewing.
It's brewing. Not a lot of drama going on in Macedonia, other than what we've just kind of talked about. But well, that's good. We'll see. Here we are again at the end of the summer. Things start to pick up as we slip into fall.
Yeah.
And see if the government can prove its worth. I think they have so far. Hopefully they'll continue to do so. And again, it's setting aside the forest fires and natural disasters, things like that. The one thing that the people will always judge the government on, any government, is the economic situation, first and foremost.
Yep.
So let's see what they can do there.
Yep.
All right. Well, good. Let's wrap that up. We will have this again on Spotify, episode 178, and all of everything that we've put on Substack, our Substack page so far in terms of podcasts, is now available on Spotify as well. So,
Yep.
but we'll start promoting that, and if that floats your boat, using Spotify to listen to podcasts, we'll encourage you to use that, and we will talk to you in another week or two, something like that.
No, absolutely.
All right. Good talking to you, Cvetin. Take care.
You too, buddy. Take care.